Hello, this is Alison Derevensky, and welcome to our MPA Showcase for 2022. Our team includes Colin Baker, Devon Deck, Melissa Sweet, and myself. Our theme for this showcase is social equity, an MPA value that is embedded in multiple competencies and is a core theme in our presentations. The order of our presentations is Colin, Devon, Mel, and Allison, going from concrete examples of social equity in our police and immigration systems to more environmentally focused examples with food justice and environmental communication. We look forward to your questions at the end of our presentations. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Colin Baker, and for the PAT 589 Reflective Practitioner class, the final class in the Master of Public Administration program at Binghamton University, I decided to do my final showcase presentation on police as a representative bureaucracy, evaluating Camden, New Jersey's change in policing policy. So, a little bit of introduction. Police reform as a policy. This not only gained a lot of traction in the 2020 year when there are high levels of protests and questions about what does policing look like in the United States? How should policing look like? What is the status of police-community relations? Are police forces representative of the groups that they serve or the issues they serve? Are they executing exactly what us as a community are asking them to do? So I chose this not only because it was quote-unquote a hot topic, but also because I had a personal connection to it, and it's something that I felt needed a little bit more research into. So I think as time goes on, I will also continue to do this research because it's a topic that really needs it and is very close and sensitive to a lot of groups and a lot of ideas within the United States. For this reason, I decided to look at Camden, New Jersey as a case study, and I did this because Camden, New Jersey is a specific city that decided that they wanted to do a major police reform, and I wanted to see if that had any link to what a representative bureaucracy is, which I believe is what police forces should be aiming to do. And how does this showcase connect to my certificate of local government management and the universal competencies? So for the universal competencies, it connects strongly because it allows me to participate in the public process, research an idea, and make decisions in a complex, dynamic environment. And this is something that I feel is important because as I enter the local government field, I want to look at what exactly local governments can do to create a strong police reform, to create a reform that allows for police forces to talk to their communities and learn more about how at the local level, this is where the services and the action needs to begin regarding this dynamic. So police is a representative bureaucracy. I'm looking at three things. Are they representative across gender, sexual orientation, racial, religious forms to the community? If the community is 90% white, what does the police force look like? If the community is a minority, is the majority in the sense where over 50% of the people in the community are black or African American alone, or Hispanic or Latino, is the police force representing that, or is the police force more white than what the community's population represents? These are issues that are important to the community. And these groups or these people who are in the community may have issues that the police force are not currently representing. And that's something that I want to look at when we're talking about representative bureaucracy and whether the police force is carrying that out. So the United States is not doing this particularly well in the sense that only 3 major cities out of the 50 that were surveyed were in this latest report showcased that the United States, of those 3 cities, only 3 of them are actually conducive of what the community is and representative of what the community population is. So, Camden, New Jersey, issues in the greater community included crime, corruption within the police force, low education levels, low opportunity and development levels, and this was noticed, especially in New York's in a National Department of Justice report. But what was done about it is that it was a decision made by the County of Camden, where Camden County decided to move to a county-led force, which meant that the city police force was abolished. Was this decision a decision that was founded in being able to get a more representative bureaucracy? The point of the policy was not only to save money financially, but it was also to lower crime levels, lower corruption. In this point, it would enhance police-community relationships. And what it did is it forced a lot of new hiring and recruitment measures and more ideas of how policing should look like, which tactics should be used, how can we recruit a more diverse set of candidates. So while it's very hard to achieve a actual perfect representative bureaucracy, I thought Camden City Police Department did a good job in the sense that they were able to enhance police-community relations through qualitative and quantitative measures being stacked up against how they looked in 2011 compared to 2021, and through interviews and dialogue across the community and how people are now is a more well-rounded department that fits the specific needs of each group rather than walking past the actual root of the issues, which is argued what was done in the past according to people in the police department and people in the community. While that happened, they did not meet the proportional levels, but they can be used as a model, especially when President Barack Obama visited Camden and said that this should be used as a model for police reform across the United States to enhance public understanding and representation in the police department as a role in the community. Here you'll see my final showcase where I examine exactly whether or not this is an effective example of the police force serving as a representative bureaucracy, and I give a little bit more background on Camden, New Jersey, what a representative bureaucracy is, and whether or not this is a strong link that can be used for models for local governments in the United States, which as I move further into my career, I would love to continue to study this topic and really look at each specific local community and see whether or not their police force is meeting their specific issues and representing the population.
Hello everybody, my name is Devon Deck, and for my MPA showcase I'm going to speak to you all about refugee admissions policy in the United States, and specifically about using a framework called cultural theory utilized by policy scholars to anticipate reactions towards new policy or policy shifts. I'm also going to show you how this approach can solve a fundamental problem with an established practice called the Advocacy Coalition Framework, or ACF. Okay, first some background regarding the policies we're going to use. On May 3rd, 2021, the President released an emergency determination which raised the ceiling of refugee admissions in the country from 15,000 to 65,000 for the year. And this was due in large part to growing humanitarian crises across the globe, including specifically those in Afghanistan. And due in most part to COVID-19, the ceiling was never reached, not even close, falling much shorter than anticipated at closer to 10,000 for the year. But in August 2021, the Taliban once again took control of the country, and this created a chaotic withdrawal, leaving many at-risk Afghanis helpless. And for 2022, the United States Refugee Admissions Program set a new ceiling of 125,000 admitted refugees, and in addition granted a P2 designation for certain Afghan nationals. This designation refers to those who aided the U.S. in Afghanistan during its tenure, and allows them domestic resettlement without the need for corroboration by a U.S. Embassy agent. Using cultural theory, I'm going to postulate how policy scholars can anticipate reactions towards the revised refugee cap, this P2 designation, and resettlement within their community, and these will be our dependent variables. Before my hypotheses can be reached, a brief explanation is needed for cultural theory. Simply put, humans prefer to have a way of life, and these personal instilled beliefs are subjective to each person, and they lead people to evaluate policy based on how it interacts with this way of life. Cultural theory uses this notion to predict regularities in human behavior, and it systematically characterizes people to fall into one of four cultures, depending on the situation or on the policy. So these are the four cultures that one could belong to. Hierarchical cultures value order. In this culture, structure is highly emphasized, with each individual having their own role among the hierarchy. Decisions are made by people above themselves, and those below it accept this because the individual above them made that for a reason. In this culture, authority is more important than autonomy. I predict that the implementation of the first two policies will be enough to gain support from hierarchists, and the third, the resettlement support in the community, will be regionally dependent and based on reciprocation by those in power. The next is egalitarian. These cultures value equality. Autonomy is also valued, so each individual within the culture has an equal voice in a collective decision. I hypothesize that individuals within this culture will value the idea of humanitarian aid, so an increased cap would gain support, but because a P2 designation tends to unevenly distribute power and needs, I predict support will be conflicting in this group. And lastly, I predict that egalitarians will display the highest level of support for the dependent variable number 3, because entitlement of human rights and respect underpins the culture of egalitarianism. Individualists value freedom, personal choice and its autonomy are salient. An uneven distribution of power is acceptable as long as others do not impose that power onto others. And I predict that opposition towards all three dependent variables will be displayed, as those in this culture likely had no say in the matter of these policies, and they will likely impose on their own personal autonomy. The last is fatalist, and these are often the hardest to rely on. Individuals within this culture view life as a game of luck, and that things happen due to predetermined circumstances, and infringement upon this is not accepted. The first two dependent variables I'm predicted to find strong opposition because of this, and the third I predict will display indifference. This project was intended to be a setup to run a regression model. Because I lack the resources to fund an accurate survey and run a regression, the scope of this project is simply to display the operation of cultural theory and create the variables in survey and show its applicability to another established framework. So next we'll look at the method for placement into one of the four cultures as done by Song, Silva, and Jenkins-Smith. So below there are 12 questions, 3 per set, aimed at determining one's culture. The hierarchism questions measure one's propensity to follow social norms, authority, and rules. The egalitarian questions gauge a respondent's proclivity towards social, economic, and political equality. Individualism questions poke at the idea of disagreement with allowing society to assist others. And the fatalist questions stress a passive personal outlook on life, and a belief that life occurrences are a matter of destiny. The index for each of these biases will be calculated by taking the average of each of these 4 question sets, with the highest being the group that one belongs to. To gauge our respondents' feelings towards our 3 dependent variables, a straightforward question will be asked about each, and they'll be asked to rate these on a 7-point Likert scale like before, ranging from 1 being strongly disagree to 7, which is strongly agree. These questions can be found on this slide, and in addition, we will also be controlling for multiple different potentially spurious variables. These questions can also be found on the slide below, and they will be assessed in a similar manner. Expected findings of cultural theory are valuable to policy studies as they provide a linkage to one of the core faults of the ACF. The ACF, or Advocacy Coalition Framework, simply put, is a much-used framework in policy studies, and it conjectures that people engage in politics to turn their beliefs into policy. They become policy actors and form coalitions with others who share these same beliefs. The people who created the ACF identify a core issue with their framework, and this is that the characterization and measurement of these beliefs is inconsistent across cases, and this is very problematic in a framework where these core beliefs are what create a coalition. They note that some guidance is needed for the identification of the end content of these deep core beliefs, and using cultural theory you can begin to do this, and this will bolster the reliability of ACF. What this means is that for policy scholars studying refugee policy, they could potentially be better off utilizing an approach such as the one below.
Hi, my name is Melissa Sweet, and I'm here to talk about agricultural nonprofits and NGOs, the role of local knowledge in organizational climate change mitigation strategies. As we know, climate change is one of the biggest issues we have facing our world today. This includes a wide variety of impacts, including impacts on the agricultural sector. We are currently heavily relying on scientific knowledge to provide mitigation strategies. However, a salient and reliant approach is utilizing local and indigenous knowledge. In addition, another issue is that governments have been largely unsuccessful putting forth aggressive climate change mitigation strategies. Thus, both combining local knowledge use and the use of nonprofits, as nonprofits traditionally fulfill gaps that the government is unable to, is a good way to provide climate change mitigation strategies and to fight climate change. My question is, how are U.S. and African-based nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, utilizing local knowledge in their climate change mitigation strategies? The aim of this project is to inform and empower governments, nonprofits, and citizens of nonprofit usage of local knowledge agricultural climate change mitigation strategies, overall fighting against anthropogenic climate change. To move on, we're going to talk about my literature review. Overall, climate change has a wide variety of impacts on agriculture. As the EPA has stated, there will be similar agricultural impacts worldwide, obviously ranging from each area, but will be similar. Some of these impacts include reduce in yields or increases in yields. This is dependent upon precipitation levels, as well as the number of crops yielded, livestock, food sustainability, as well as droughts. As stated previously, local knowledge can be used as these communities have a wide range of knowledge about their community and climate change as they have dealt with it over the years. Scientific knowledge currently takes precedent, and there's a lack of use of local knowledge. Many researchers suggest merging both local knowledge and scientific knowledge, as local knowledge meets scientific standards currently and follows sustainability ideologies. Some of these strategies include agricultural diversity and resiliency and cultural techniques. To start, the agricultural diversity and resiliency, this can include using a diverse range of plants and crops in order to sustain a community, as well as livestock variation and agroforestry. Agroforestry is the introduction of trees to improve the soil. Lastly, cultural techniques include spirituality and adaptive diet. Spirituality provides mental resilience and survival. The way in which I was able to answer my question was through 6 interviews, both with agricultural organizations in the US and in Africa. Organizations have observed the following local knowledge mitigation strategies. Currently, 5 out of the 6 organizations see environmental mitigation strategies being used, especially agroforestry. One organization does not utilize local knowledge, but they try to spread information about regenerative agriculture as to many people as possible around the world. Some unique findings is that the communities will use local markets or one-on-one education. And as reported in my literature review, a lot of these findings are similar to what was provided by researchers. This is how organizations utilize local knowledge. 5 out of the 6 organizations utilize local knowledge. One of them does not. Of the organizations that utilize local knowledge, they incorporate community participation, collaboration, and integrate them into their projects and organizations. Many organizations serve as a network or organizational support to the community and implement a bottom-up approach. For example, community come to them and inform them of what is working and what is not. The organizations that utilize local knowledge, 2 of them explain this knowledge as priceless, critical, and fundamental. They definitely value the relationship that the community has with the land and the expertise that the community holds in the agricultural sector. The organization implements local knowledge in the following ways. 3 of the organizations utilize both scientific and community-informed approaches when deciding which strategies to implement. Similarly, other resources are used, such as policy research and local education. Lastly, I would like to discuss how this connects to the universal competencies set forth by NASPA. While I believe that my project touches on every universal competency, it primarily addresses UC1, UC3, and UC5. For UC1, to lead and manage in the public interest, I believe this project takes an approach both to understand the research that is currently out there, as well as to talk to communities and to the nonprofits there, thus taking in the public interest in a holistic way. 3, I was able to collect data, analyze it, and portray it in a fashionable manner. This project exemplifies this as it's utilizing different information from a diverse range of resources, including both peer-reviewed articles, people on the ground, and communities at large.
Hello, I'm Alison Derevensky, and this is my MPA Showcase presentation. My presentation is called An Evaluation of Environmental Communication Methods in the Rondout and Neversink Watershed. My advisor for this project was Dr. George Holmesy, the Director of Environmental Studies at Binghamton University, and my natural resource managers were Mark Vian from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, as well as Stacy Hole from the Rondout Neversink Stream Program. An overview of this project: the Rondout Neversink Stream Program is located in Neversink, which is in Sullivan County within the Catskills region. The Rondout Neversink Stream Program wants to increase stakeholder and community engagement in their programs. Stream management has to do with managing water quality, erosion, invasive species, basically any issue that could impact a stream habitat or streamside residents. And there are a lot of streamside residents in the Rondout and Neversink basins within the Catskills. My research questions for this project were: what are the current methods of sharing environmental information in the environmental field, how might environmental communication methods need to change to reach different demographic groups in the Rondout and Neversink watershed, and how can the Rondout and Neversink stream program increase stakeholder engagement in their programs and stream management planning process. This project relates to natural resource management in that environmental communication methods are important for building trust in local communities in order to make natural resource management and stream management plans successful. You really need community support to make plans successful due to funding, and also community support just helps plans go more smoothly and actually come to fruition. My methods for this project were completing a demographic analysis of the Rondout and Neversink watershed to measure recent changes over the past 10 years. I used ArcGIS Pro and Social Explorer for this. I also analyzed community participation data of past events using past attendance sheets from the Rondout and Neversink Stream program. I also conducted a survey of roughly 1,000 residents to ask how much they know about the current stream management plans and what they expect to see in the updated plans coming this fall. I also interviewed 9 stream management coordinators and educators across the country to ask what they do to conduct outreach for their organizations and what communication methods they prefer or would like to see in the environmental field. I conducted these interviews because I think that learning from other organizations can be really helpful when we're trying to improve our own communication methods here in the Catskills. So I've created a few maps. The first map on the left is of the Rondout and Neversink watershed, and the one on the right is of the same watershed, but with the census tracts overlaid on top. And I used these 3 census tracts to collect demographic data using Social Explorer. I looked at the demographic categories of age, geography, race, education level, household income, and political affiliation, and the intersection of all of these demographics within my literature review to see if there were any correlation between demographic categories and types of communication methods that are successful. I received 171 survey responses for a response rate of 17%. 65% of those responses were from the Rondout Basin and 35% were from the Neversink Basin. And according to the survey, most of the survey respondents preferred paper and email communication the most. One person preferred paper and wrote in their survey that they really only answered the survey because it came in a really nice folder with photos and other information packets that they found helpful. For my social media question within the survey, I found that most survey respondents actually never use social media. So that's good to know for the Rondout and Neversink Stream program to focus their efforts more on paper and email rather than boosting their social media presence. From my 9 interviews, I collected that COVID-19 has obviously been a major challenge for conducting outreach, especially by limiting the in-person planning meetings that have proven to be helpful in a variety of communities. Other challenges include maintaining interest within the community after a project is completed, and successful communication methods include paper, email, community liaisons, and in-person planning meetings. This project is connected to the MPA competencies, especially number 5, which is to communicate and interact productively and in culturally responsive ways with a diverse and changing workforce and society at large. This project is really geared towards improving community support and community connections between nonprofit environmental organizations and community members. And in order to do that, we really need to listen to community members who have a variety of educational backgrounds, racial differences, and different characteristics that can make planning difficult, but also very interesting. And the way we need to go about this as public administrators is really just go in with an open mind and be open to what people have to say within the community so we can move forward and plan for the future. Thank you.